Okay, listener, have you ever heard the terms Scrum Master and IT Manager thrown around in the tech world, but you're secretly wondering what these people actually do?
It's a really great question and something that we are diving deep into today, using your stack of articles and notes here to break down these really crucial roles in software development.
I'm all ears.
Get ready for some aha moments because we're going to go beyond just job titles to uncover how they actually operate and how they collaborate and even how those roles might be changing.
I love it. So let's start with the basics. How do we define a Scrum Master versus an IT Manager? I mean, they're both involved in tech projects, but in really different ways, right?
Yeah, think of it like this. A Scrum Master is deeply embedded within a specific development team.
Okay.
Ensuring that they're following Agile principles and working as efficiently as possible.
Gotcha.
One of your sources, Atlassian, really nailed it when they described the Scrum Master as a facilitator who not only understands Agile best practices, but also helps the team discover even better ways to work together.
Interesting.
It's not just about following the rules. It's about constantly seeking improvement.
So they're like Agile coaches pushing the team to be their best.
Precisely. Now, the IT manager has a much broader scope, overseeing the technical strategy for an entire project or even the whole organization.
So bigger picture.
Bigger picture, exactly. They're responsible for managing the IT staff, making sure the technology aligns with the company's goals, and ultimately keeping everything running smoothly from a technical standpoint.
Okay, so we've got the Agile specialist, the Scrum Master, and then the IT manager, who's more of a strategic overseer. Did any of the sources give us a real-world example of the kind of decisions each role makes?
Absolutely. Let's say a development team is struggling to meet their sprint goals because they're constantly interrupted by requests from other departments. A Scrum Master might introduce a new communication tool or workflow to streamline those requests and protect the team's focus. That's them championing the Agile process in action.
Interesting. So it's not just about theory. They're getting their hands dirty and solving problems. What about an example for the IT manager?
Imagine a company's deciding whether to build their own data center or use a cloud platform like AWS.
Big decision.
That's a decision with huge technical and financial implications, and it would likely fall to the IT manager to analyze the options, weigh the pros and cons, and ultimately make a recommendation. That's strategic thinking on a whole other level.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the Scrum Master is focused on the day-to-day flow of the team, and the IT manager is making those big picture calls about technology and resources. But I have to admit, whenever I hear about Agile and sprints, my eyes kind of glaze over. Can we break down some of those key concepts for those of us who aren't fluent in developer speak?
Of course, Agile is essentially a way of working that emphasizes flexibility, collaboration, and continuous improvement.
Okay.
It's all about breaking down big projects into smaller chunks called sprints, typically lasting a week or two. Each sprint has a specific set of goals and deliverables, and the team works together to achieve those goals. Then at the end of the sprint, they reflect on what went well, what could be improved, and adjust their approach for the next sprint. It's a very dynamic and iterative way of working.
Okay, that actually makes sense. So the Scrum Master is guiding the team through those sprints, making sure everyone is on track and following those Agile principles. What about the IT manager? Are they involved in those sprints at all?
They might be, especially if there are technical challenges or resource allocation decisions that need to be made.
Yeah.
But their main focus is on the bigger picture,
Right.
ensuring that the team's work aligns with the overall technical strategy and the business goals of the organization. One of your sources, Podkua, highlighted the IT manager's responsibility for fostering a healthy team environment and guiding career development. That's something that often gets overlooked but is incredibly important for long-term success.
For sure. Okay, I'm starting to get a clearer picture of these roles, but let's dive even deeper into the nitty-gritty. What are some of the specific responsibilities that fall under each role? I mean, what does a Scrum Master actually do all day?
Picture this. It's the beginning of a new sprint, and the Scrum Master is facilitating a daily stand-up meeting.
Okay.
It's not your typical meeting, though. Everyone stands, keeps it brief, and focuses on three things: what they did yesterday, what they're doing today, and any roadblocks they're facing.
What?
The Scrum Master keeps the meeting focused and makes sure any impediments are addressed quickly so the team can stay on track.
So like the meeting referee, keeping things efficient and productive. I can definitely see the appeal of that. What about later in the day? What might a Scrum Master be tackling?
They might be working with the product owner, who's essentially the voice of the customer, to refine the product backlog, which is a prioritized list of features and tasks that need to be completed. Or they might be coaching individual team members on agile principles, helping them improve their skills and work more effectively.
Wow, that's quite a range of responsibilities. So they're facilitators, coaches, and problem solvers all rolled into one. What about the IT manager? Their day probably looks a lot different, right?
Definitely. They might be meeting with stakeholders from other departments to ensure that the technology being developed aligns with their needs and goals.
Right.
Or they might be working with the finance team to secure funding for a new project or technology upgrade. They might even be interviewing candidates to expand their IT team, or looking for ways to improve the team's skills through training and development programs.
It sounds like they're constantly juggling multiple priorities and making sure the technical side of things is running smoothly across the entire organization.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface.
Wow.
There's so much more to these roles, and what's fascinating is how their differences create this dynamic interplay that can be incredibly powerful when it works well.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. It's like we've got two pieces of a puzzle that need to fit together just right.
Yeah.
Let's explore those key differences in more detail.
Let's do it. One of the most obvious differences is their scope of influence. Think of it like this. The Scrum Master's world is very micro,
Okay.
focused on that specific development team and their sprint goals. The IT manager is zoomed way out, looking at the entire landscape of the project or even the whole organization.
It's like they're operating on different scales, almost like a microscope versus a telescope, but they both need to be looking in the same direction, right?
Precisely. And that brings us to another crucial difference: authority.
Ooh, now we're getting into the juicy stuff.
It is. The Scrum Master is a leader, but without formal authority.
Oh, interesting.
They can't order people around or dictate decisions. They rely on influence, persuasion, and their deep understanding of Agile to guide the team.
So it's more like they're nudging the team in the right direction.
Exactly. They're like a shepherd guiding their flock towards a shared goal. Now, the IT manager,
Yeah,
they do have formal authority.
right.
They can make hiring decisions, allocate resources, and set the technical direction for the entire organization. They have the power to make things happen.
So one's a shepherd, the other's more like a captain steering the ship. That's quite a contrast. But I imagine that difference in authority can lead to some interesting dynamics. Maybe even some friction if they're not careful.
You're absolutely right. And that's where collaboration becomes essential.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. How do these two roles with such different perspectives and levels of authority work together effectively?
It all comes down to clear communication, mutual respect, and a shared understanding of each other's roles and responsibilities.
So let's talk about that collaboration in more detail, because I can already see how things could go wrong if the lines get blurred.
Absolutely. This is especially important for anyone listening who might be in one of these roles themselves.
Right.
It's all about setting those boundaries, but in a way that promotes teamwork, not conflict.
Okay, I'm hooked. Let's unpack that collaborative dynamic. Where do we even begin?
Well, a great place to start is by acknowledging that both roles are essential for success.
Right, it's not a competition, it's a partnership.
Exactly. And like any good partnership, it thrives on open communication and willingness to understand each other's perspectives. But let's dig into some real-world scenarios to see how this plays out in practice.
I'm ready for some real talk examples. Bring it on. Okay, so we've established that collaboration between these two roles is key. But how does that actually play out in the real world? Can you give us an example of like a potential conflict and how they might work together to resolve it?
Absolutely. Imagine a situation where a new software feature needs to be implemented quickly to meet a pressing business deadline.
Okay.
The IT manager, focused on the overall project timeline and the needs of the business, might push for a more traditional waterfall approach to development,
Right.
where everything is planned out in detail up front. But the Scrum Master, understanding the benefits of Agile's flexibility and iterative nature, might advocate for a different approach, perhaps breaking the feature down into smaller, more manageable chunks that can be delivered incrementally.
That sounds like a recipe for a clash of priorities. How could they find common ground without one role overstepping their boundaries?
That's where communication and a shared understanding of each other's roles becomes crucial. The Scrum Master could explain to the IT manager how an Agile approach, even with a tight deadline, can actually mitigate risk and lead to a higher quality product.
Okay.
They might point out that breaking the feature down into smaller sprints allows for more frequent feedback and course correction, ultimately leading to a solution that better meets the needs of the business.
So it's about the Scrum Master educating the IT manager on the benefits of Agile, even in situations where it might seem counterintuitive.
Exactly. And the IT manager, in turn, needs to be open to hearing that perspective and understanding that the Scrum Master isn't just being difficult.
Right.
They're advocating for an approach that they believe will ultimately lead to a better outcome. The IT manager might still have concerns about meeting the deadline, but through open dialogue, they can work together to find a solution that balances the need for speed with the benefits of an iterative Agile process.
Okay, so it's not about one role dictating to the other, it's about finding a compromise that leverages the strengths of both approaches. But what happens when the conflict is less about a specific project and more about a fundamental difference in personalities or work styles?
That's where those soft skills we mentioned earlier come into play. Emotional intelligence, active listening, and the ability to build rapport are crucial for navigating those more nuanced challenges.
For sure.
The Scrum Master might need to understand that the IT manager comes from a world where command and control was the norm.
Right.
And they're adjusting to this more collaborative way of working.
So patience and empathy are key.
Absolutely. The IT manager, in turn, needs to be willing to let go of some control and trust the Scrum Master's expertise in facilitating the Agile process. It's about building a relationship based on mutual respect and understanding, even when those differences in personality or work style create tension.
It sounds like this relationship can be a bit of a dance, requiring constant communication and adjustment to find that harmonious balance.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not always easy. There will be missteps, disagreements, and moments of frustration. But when both roles are committed to working together and leveraging each other's strengths, the results can be incredibly powerful.
Speaking of powerful, we've talked a lot about the Scrum Master's perspective, but what about the IT manager? How do they view this relationship, and what are some tips for them to ensure it's a successful one?
It's a great question, and it's important to remember that a successful partnership requires effort from both sides. From the IT manager's perspective, they need to see the Scrum Master as a valuable ally, not just someone who's there to enforce the rules of Agile. The Scrum Master has a deep understanding of the team's dynamics, their strengths and weaknesses, and how to get the best out of them.
So it's about tapping into that knowledge and expertise, not just seeing the Scrum Master as a process enforcer.
Precisely. A savvy IT manager will regularly check in with their Scrum Master, not just for status updates, but to gain insights into how the team is functioning, what challenges they're facing, and how the Agile process can be refined to improve efficiency. They'll also be proactive in advocating for the Scrum Master's role within the organization, ensuring they have the resources and support they need to be successful.
So it's about being a champion for the Scrum Master and the Agile approach.
Exactly. And when conflicts arise, and they inevitably will, it's about approaching those conversations with an open mind and a willingness to compromise. Remember, both roles share the same ultimate goal: delivering high-quality products that meet the needs of the business.
It sounds like a lot of this boils down to communication, respect, and a shared vision for success. But what about those IT managers who might be resistant to Agile methodologies or who are used to more traditional top-down approaches? How can a Scrum Master build a bridge with someone who might be skeptical or even hostile to their role?
That's where patience, diplomacy, and a focus on results become paramount. The Scrum Master might need to take on an educational role, explaining the principles of Agile in a way that resonates with the IT manager's experience and concerns. They might also need to be strategic in highlighting the successes of the Agile process, showcasing how it's led to tangible improvements in team performance, product quality, or delivery speed.
So it's about winning them over with evidence and demonstrating the value of Agile in a way that speaks their language.
Exactly. And sometimes it's simply about finding common ground and focusing on the shared goals. Even if an IT manager is hesitant about Agile, they're still invested in the success of the project and the well-being of their team. The Scrum Master can leverage those shared interests to build a more collaborative relationship.
It sounds like navigating this relationship requires a delicate balance of assertiveness, diplomacy, and a deep understanding of human nature. It's not just about mastering the technical aspects of Agile, it's about being a people person too.
That's a great observation, and it speaks to the evolving nature of these roles. As technology continues to advance at an unprecedented pace, we're seeing a shift in the skills and qualities that are most valued in both Scrum Masters and IT managers.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What kind of shifts are we talking about? What does the future hold for these two roles? Will they continue to exist as separate entities, or will they morph into something entirely new?
That's a million-dollar question, and one that's being debated by experts across the tech industry. Let's explore those possibilities and see what insights your stack of sources has to offer.
I'm ready to peek into the crystal ball of tech leadership. Bring on the future. So we've got this fascinating dynamic between Scrum Masters and IT managers, but what happens when those roles start to change? I mean, technology is evolving so fast. How can these roles, keep up?
It's a crucial question because the skills that were essential even just 5 years ago might be obsolete tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
One of your articles here highlighted this growing trend of automation where machines are taking over those more routine tasks. That's a game changer for both roles.
So are we talking robot overlords replacing Scrum Masters and IT managers? That's a bit scary, to be honest.
Not quite. It's not about robots taking over completely, but rather how humans adapt to work alongside these increasingly sophisticated machines. For Scrum Masters, this might mean becoming more proficient in data analysis, using those tools to identify bottlenecks in the workflow or predict potential issues before they derail a sprint. It's about leveraging technology to enhance their agile superpowers.
Okay, that makes sense. So they're not being replaced, they're evolving into data-driven agile gurus. What about IT managers? How does automation impact their role?
IT managers will need to focus on those skills that machines can't replicate: strategic thinking, complex decision-making, and fostering a culture of innovation within their teams.
Those are big ones.
They'll need to be adept at identifying those uniquely human skills that will keep their organizations ahead of the curve.
So it's less about managing servers and more about leading people through this constantly changing technological landscape. I can definitely see that. Any other big trends we should have on our radar?
One that's already having a huge impact is the rise of remote work and distributed teams. This presents both challenges and opportunities for both roles.
Yeah, I imagine trying to coordinate a daily stand-up meeting with a team scattered across multiple time zones could be a logistical nightmare.
It definitely requires a different approach. Scrum Masters might need to rely more heavily on virtual communication tools.
Right.
And find creative ways to maintain team cohesion and camaraderie when everyone isn't physically together.
And IT managers would need to ensure those remote teams have the infrastructure and tech support they need to be productive no matter where they're working from.
Exactly. It's a whole new world of virtual leadership, and both roles need to adapt to thrive in this new environment.
This is making me think that the most valuable skills in the future might not be technical at all, but rather those soft skills that we often overlook.
You're hitting on a really important point. As technology becomes more complex, those human skills, communication, empathy, problem solving, the ability to build trust and inspire teams, those are the things that will set great leaders apart.
So it's not just about knowing the code, it's about knowing how to connect with people and navigate the complexities of human interaction, even in a virtual world. I can see why those skills are becoming increasingly valuable.
Absolutely. And this is where the line between Scrum Master and IT Manager might start to get a bit blurry. We might see the emergence of a hybrid role.
Interesting.
Someone who can blend the agile expertise of a Scrum Master with the strategic vision and leadership skills of an IT manager.
So like a super-powered tech leader who can code, coach, and inspire all at the same time. That's pretty impressive.
It is. And it's just one possibility.
Yeah.
The truth is the future of these roles is still being written, and it's an exciting time to be a part of this evolution.
Okay, listener, what stands out to you about these roles? Have you ever worked with a Scrum Master or an IT manager? It feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
Exactly. And here's something to ponder as technology evolves at warp speed. Do you think these roles might change, maybe even merge in the future? Fascinating stuff to keep an eye on.